Thank you for tuning in to the Three Circles Living podcast, where you can learn how to improve your life. And it doesn't matter if you want to accelerate your professional life, your career, you want to have better relationships in your personal life, you want to be healthier, want to find purpose and fulfillment. This is a podcast for you. And as always, make sure to share it and leave a comment with something that you found most valuable. We would appreciate that. And today we're going to continue about talking about interpersonal relationships and all the little gaps that come up in our communication, and specifically today about how the role of personality affects this. And I love your eye roll there that some of the listeners cannot see, but yes, me too, because it's really like, have you ever noticed that, with some people you click more, with others it's like, what is missing there? Like, why is this not happening, and the energy is not there and everything. And it's not that you don't like that person. Sometimes it is. Like,
Well,
don't
you
get
might not. Yeah, immediately you might not.
sometimes, but it's also about that the different personality types. And, we want to break that down. And we also want to talk a little bit about different types, how it affects it, and what you can actually do to avoid the misunderstandings and prevent them from happening, because that's the ultimate goal. You want to be able to communicate that you get your point across, but also that the other person has a chance to understand and get their point across.
Yeah, this is such a powerful awareness area, um, which all of them, every one of these factors for the gap that we've been talking about, image and motivations, those kinds of things are, once you have awareness of them, it's a game changer just for yourself and how you show up in a conversation. But this one is massively important because we all come into our lives, and then until we get really wise, which takes a lot of seasoning to get there, right? We're so reactive emotionally to any kind of scenario. And this one, it happens so fast because, you know, you that there's times you'll meet somebody and like within 5 seconds you're like, how can I get away? How can I get away from this person? Which would be a classic introvert meeting extrovert situation where the extrovert just explodes into the space, and the introvert's trying to figure out, is there a way that I can tunnel into the floor right now and disappear, because I don't know what to do, right? They're so uncomfortable. And you can also have it in the inverse where an extrovert's like, this person's like dead. They're
Yeah.
physically in front of me, but they're dead because they're not engaging at that same energized way. They're very, very reserved. And it's just being, they're different humans. So one thing that I would encourage everybody to do is to do some do a profile of some sort. I'm a big fan of the DISC personality profile, which is a really great preferences and behavioral style profile. I've taught it for many, many years. I no longer teach it, for companies because I don't do that stuff anymore. But wow, it's such a great awareness tool, and it helps you in so many levels because I know for myself, being an introvert as a young person, and feeling socially awkward, which, by the way, if you have that, right, that never goes away. You learn how to skill it. You skill it to a point where people might not notice. It doesn't change your feeling. And maybe you're more
Yeah.
confident that you'll be okay in a situation, but you're still going to deal with the way it makes you feel because it's not your natural preference. But essentially, and I think I can speak for a lot of introverts here, you feel like something's wrong with you when you're a younger person. And if you never develop awareness, or I should just say, if you never develop in this way, you don't get focused on develop. You build your whole life around avoidance, right? Avoiding being in situations, which cuts out a lot of opportunity for life and for development and for growth. But you feel like what's wrong with me? Because everybody else seems to be having a good time. Well, of course, first thing though is they're not. There's a lot of people like you who aren't talking about it because nobody talks about this stuff because it's, it's feelings. Nobody talking about feelings. Ooh, right? That's bad. That's exposure. That's scary. Um, and so you think there's something wrong with you when it's just a lack of understanding what you prefer and how those things affect you because everything is going to go through your feeling part first before it gets to your brain. And if you're not aware, it can't get to your brain.
Yeah.
It's not going to get there because you're shutting down.
Yeah, you're definitely speaking to me because I was that introvert. I still am in some areas. And the funny part too, not funny, but interesting part is like introvert. I always thought it's like the shy person, but it's not. It's like your energy is different. You get drained when there's this hyper person in front of you, and you're like, just calm down, please. I need quiet. And whereas, like you said, that extrovert needs the energy, it needs the people around it. They need to have that action always. But it's important to understand you and how you are. For me, it's like a day to day. It might be an hour to hour thing, right? Where just want to have it quiet, but then I go out dancing and be in the middle of a club where it's like loud and so many people. So it depends on certain things. Again, it's the awareness that you have and how you come into a conversation, which type and what do you need, and play off those signals, but also that other person where they're at. I
You
think
know,
we,
you made a
sorry.
distinction. I know I just interrupted you, so I violated
Okay.
communication tenets. You made a really interesting distinction there that you can be an introvert and not be shy. And I personally, I was an introvert, am an introvert, and was shy too, which is like a double win, right? So it's so so yes, the introvert is not going to be out there, and they get their cup filled up in intimate time, but also in alone time, right? They're processing inwardly, not outwardly, as a general rule, and it comes back to awareness, understanding this about yourself and knowing that that's just the way you're wired. And then you have to learn what skills allow you to engage, but that's actually a separate topic. That's in the actual skill work. This is more in the understanding that these distinctions exist, and we're using the most simple at this moment, we're using the most simple distinction: an introvert versus an extrovert, right? That's a which, by the way, there are more introverts than there are extroverts, according to all the personality profile out there, and the gap is pretty wide. There's a much greater amount of introverts than there are extroverts, according to studies. Now, sure, there's maybe some other study that's going to say that's all a bunch of bunk, but of course, that's the nature of whoever's making the study.
Yes, they can play with the data, that's for sure. But yeah, let's talk about some others that maybe, yeah, we talked about introverts, extroverts. What else um, can be that personality, right? We have someone that is more based on facts, someone that is plays off of emotions. Like just think about when you're in your work space and you have to present data. Where do you go? Where do you put the focus? Do you have a presentation that's just numbers, or do you build a relationship first before you go into it? And numbers is like the last thing you talk about. Like that makes a big difference and of your success, like in that, but also like in your personal life. Like, um, it depends on like I'm very emotional. So I need emotions. I need to feel. My husband doesn't. Like he's not like typical example. And just to give that story that you guys see that this is real life, like this is not made up. But I was in Germany, he was in the US, and we had a long distance relationship. I'm very emotional about it because I only see him so many times. And we separated at the airport because he went to his new duty station. And I went back home to Germany, he in the US. And he just left. I need long goodbyes. I'm emotional. I need to sit there until the last second, until I cannot go any further. And he's just like, bye. And I'm like, I don't know when I see you again. So, just knowing that. And it's a running joke in our relationship. Like we joke about it. But at that point, because I didn't do the work, I hadn't done it, I didn't understand it, I was just like pissed off. So, it's important to know those things. In the same line also, like if you need things more structured versus being more spontaneous. I'm more spontaneous, right? I don't care. Like I'm just along for the light, right? I don't care where we go. We can go to the airport. You just tell me. I don't care, right? I don't need necessarily a plan. I'll just figure it out along the way. Others, it will just hearing that, you might sit there and be terrified. Like, how can you do that? Right? But you just have to be aware that some people are like that. So if you come to me and you tell me a lot of facts and everything's organized, I'm not listening. You lost me. I don't know what
Yeah.
you're talking.
Well, you can take that into the next example, which is the big picture versus the detail,
Yes.
right? So if you're a detail person, you're talking to a big picture person, you are going to put them to sleep in a matter of seconds. They're going to totally zone out. And if you're a big picture person and you talk to a detail person in big picture, they're going to be like, "What are you even talking about? What?" They're not going to be able to go there. They can't go there, and so you're not speaking the same languages, and it's just based on the preference of how you like to receive things. And as long as you're aware that that exists, then it changes a little of how you drop into a conversation. And one thing I want to jump back to, when we were talking a little bit about, you were talking about
Hmm.
facts and feelings. There's we've all been in a situation where we're talking to someone who's just get to the bottom line, get to the point, right? That's the way they want it, right? They want it direct and right there. Well, this kind of stuff that we're talking about. It's pervasive in every aspect of life. So it's personal and it's professional, right? So it's you bring culture into the mix, and culture then adds a whole another layer of complexity. Do you understand the culture of the person that you're talking to? Because it doesn't matter what their personality style is. There are many cultures where you can't talk details or business or anything until you have honored the relationship first and you have talked about how is their family and how are they doing. And if you're not aware of that, you are going to immediately create this wedge with this
Yeah.
person. First of all, they're going to think, well, you're not honoring my culture. You didn't even do enough homework to know that this is required, right? But they won't say it. They're not going to say it to you. They're just going to judge you right then. And that's going to be the end. And it won't matter what you do because they're going to feel disrespected that you didn't care anything about the human side of this person. You went immediately to the business end,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, there are places for that in the world, but as a general rule, culture is going to affect that. That lays on top of this, right? It's in there, and if you're in the United States, so often I don't even know what our culture is, right? Because we're just a mishmash of the whole world, but then we're USA, we're the Americans, right? So everywhere else in the world has a steeped, developed, you know, thousands and thousands of years culture.
Yeah.
We don't. We don't have that here. And so we have very little social awareness of that existence. And when
Yeah.
it's just it's a real thing that has to be addressed.
It is, and it impacts your relationships. Like you said, the other person is judging you if you want to or not. It just happens. It's that reaction. Um, there's misinterpretation of things that can happen. There's frustration there that is happening. There's distance because now they're gonna avoid you. They understand that you don't understand them, and why do they want to spend more time with you? Like for example, like when we went through the different gaps that there are or personality roles that there are, I said I'm very emotional and I'm very spontaneous and big picture. I don't need details. I don't need structure, but I'm also German to your point of culture. So you might think if when you talk to me that I'm very blunt and I'm very direct, which yes, I might be, but I'm still all these other things too. So it really there is more to that, and it's just about understanding, becoming aware of that, and building that relationship with that in mind.
Yeah, direct doesn't mean rude,
No.
but it can be interpreted as rude. It can be
Yes.
interpreted as trying to steamroll or control, or it's just being direct. And if you don't know that that's what that is, and to your point, Chris, I'll never forget my first experience in Germany, which was in the mid 90s. And it was a harrowing experience. I had to meet with a group of people I had never met. And it was a preset meeting. And it was one of these situations where if I can't tell the whole story because it'd take too long, but
Mhm.
it was a chaotic situation for me. And I arrived into this setting in the middle of the afternoon with very little sleep and a lot of travel. And there was these people waiting for me to talk to me about the business at hand. And there was no preamble. It was directly in my face and like close to my face, right? It felt like I was being full force attacked. And for the first couple of minutes, I'm like, holy moly, I may not survive. And then within a few minutes, I'm like, and this is my bad, right? Because young Todd didn't do his homework and understand who I was talking with, right, from a cultural perspective. Within a few moments of then not only observing the interaction I was having, but there was other people in this at this
Mhm.
table interacting with each other. I'm like, oh, this is just how they talk. This is not this is not offensive. This is just the way it is. So okay. So then I just rolled into it because I was in it. So I just engaged back in the same level of intensity, and we were fast friends.
Yes. Yep. Reading the room and reading the signs and um, really looking at clues that you can find that help you to move forward, right? What would you say are other ways how to bridge that gap? What can you do?
Well, I'm a big fan of asking a question as a general
Mhm.
rule. I mean, you can very rarely go wrong asking a question. And
Yeah.
and if you're an introvert, this is a skill you have to develop. Anyway, you have to become really, really skilled with questions because you actually, in my opinion, an introvert, maybe it's because I am one, has a bit of an advantage because the most powerful thing you can do in any sort of communication with another person is truly listen to them. That is the most powerful thing that you can do. And an introvert is naturally oriented towards doing that. That doesn't make it a skill yet. It only makes it a preference. You can listen to someone, but do it improperly, and they don't realize you are listening, and now you've screwed the whole thing up. But
Yeah.
in order to be able to utilize that skill set that you have a natural tendency towards, that you should develop, you have to learn how to engage. That's where you have to skill up, and that that particular skill serves you in every aspect of your life. I mean, I don't think there's been an episode where we haven't talked about asking a question, right? I mean, because it's so important to become a master question asker if you want to become a really good communicator. But it allows you to you can redirect anything with a good question. You can dive deeper with a good question. You can clarify with a good
Mhm.
question, right? You can bring something out and involve someone with a good question, all of which allows you to settle into the pace, the tone, observe, get a feel for the nature of how it's best to communicate with this person because people don't come with a little cheat sheet that says here's how I like to be communicated with, but everybody has preferences for how they like to be communicated with, right? So, for me, don't steamroll. Do not try to steamroll me in a conversation. Do not. If you try to do that, I will just shut completely down. You know,
Mhm.
and at my age now, I will just excuse myself.
Yeah.
I'll just end it, and I because I don't put anything before relationship. I don't put business in having for probably 3 decades before relationship. Relationship has to come first and everything. You got to honor that. So asking a question, and I think another thing is to be conscious to tamp down your tendency to judge,
Mm.
to say, oh, well, this person's like that. You have no idea what this person's like. You're making a snap judgment based on how they're either communicating or not communicating, right? So again, if you're an extrovert and that person is being real quiet, what are the things you might assume? They're a snob. They don't like me. They're not interested. None of which are likely true. It's just you are basing it on how you see the world. That's the lens. So the personality affects the lens, and then that's flipping into this scenario. And so
Mhm.
it's going to go both ways. Just don't judge. This is a human being who deserves respect, and get curious. Let's learn. Let's learn how to operate with this person, right? That doesn't mean you're gonna like them. Some people you just don't aren't gonna really like hanging out with. That's normal. Not everybody is everybody's flavor, you know. But um, you will find that you're more compatible with more people than you know when you take a little space and reserve judgment and get curious about that person.
Yeah, I like that. Get curious. I think that's a big takeaway. Just be curious. Ask the question. I also like to mirror them, like repeat phrases that they've used, confirm, clarify. I mean, pretty much what we keep talking about. I think it works. It just always works.
Yeah, let me throw something else out really quick because we use
Mhm.
the example of the big picture versus the
Yeah.
detail. So someone comes on to you really strong about, well, just give me the bottom line. You know what a good thing to say to them is, so are you a bottom line kind of person? Is that what you care most about? And so now you've slowed this down just by asking this question. I say, yeah. I say, great. So what aspect of the bottom line do you want to know? And what supporting information is important to you relative to that. And now you are actually taking control of the conversation. Even that's what asking a question does, by the way, is it takes control of the conversation. The one asking a question is controlling, not the one listening. But then you give them a chance to express exactly what they want. You're actually now meeting them where they want to be met, but you're doing it in such a way that when you start talking, they're going to be highly interested in what you talk about because you're going to talk about specifically what they want to know. What
Yeah.
details about this big picture are important to you? Because there's no such thing as just the big picture. There's a big picture with a few details. There's gotta,
Mhm.
so then you have $5 million. Yeah, how's that? No, that's not going to work. How's that going to happen? Right? They're going to ask for your details. And so, what do you need to know is kind of where you can go. And then that kind of pushes away the feeling of attack, so to speak.
Yeah. It's that personality check, right? To understand if you can take clues of what they're doing, how they're behaving, what they have already talked to you about, or just ask the question. How do you want to see the data? You want to see the data? What's important to you? Do you want to see a certain metric? What's your goal, right? You have to ask those questions, and it doesn't mean that you don't know. It just, like you said, it positions you as the leader in that conversation. And actually, the other person is going to appreciate you because now they feel understood and they actually feel cared about because you ask questions about them. That
Yes,
I
well, I
think,
mean that's the ultimate connector, right?
yeah,
Is when someone feels like you value them enough to try to understand them.
yeah. And that goes
You
both
win.
for your personal relationships and business relationships.
Absolutely. Well, you really shouldn't separate them when it comes to how you behave.
Yeah.
You should treat everybody with respect and the care, uh, and that way it's all together. I mean, because your best people you do business with that you most enjoy doing business with, you develop a relationship with, and there is going to be a personal nature to it, even though it's professional.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. I would say, like, as we come to the wrap up of this, the most important thing someone could do is to get a better understanding of their own personality
Hmm.
and understand where their blind spots are, truly understand how they like to be communicated with, because they can let people know, just so you know, it helps me if you share this and this,
Yeah.
it helps me understand you better. So knowing and knowing what you prefer, but also then knowing what you don't like, because then you will recognize those triggers when someone is doing that and they're just being themselves, but it's triggering you. It's making you feel anxious or
Hmm.
upset, or that's not the other person's problem. That's your problem, right? Don't make it the problem of the other person or the relationship, because you don't know enough about yourself to know how to handle that. Recognize it. This triggers me, and then learn the strategies for how to diffuse that, right? So that you take a breath and ask the question, or you have a comment that tempers it. Whatever it is that you have to do to become skilled in this area, the first step is to understand yourself in
Hmm.
all things, right? Too many people in the world are walking around going, that person's this, they should do this. You know what? Why don't you worry about what you should do?
Yeah.
Let's not worry about what others should do. Why don't you work on yourself? That's the
Yeah.
most important thing you can do first.
And one of the things that I've learned with that is that usually it's a mirror. There's something there for you that you should take a look at if it's bothering you.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we could talk about this more, but this
Sure.
is the gist. And if you guys have any questions, then put them in the comments and we'll talk more about it. We do another episode, whatever you need. But really, takeaway that I want everybody to have is that it's understanding your personality, like we talked about. Become aware, understand your preferences, but it's not about changing who you are. It's about understanding and how you apply those things and then bridging the gap that might happen if you don't know. That is what it's about.
Yeah. Well, you can't bridge the gap unless you're aware of your own stuff. You can't do it. So just
Awesome.
thanks again for all you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Todd. Thank you to our listeners and our people that are watching us. We hope you'll be back next week.
See you next time.
Bye.